Hi. At the point that you're watching this lesson, you should have read chapters 9 and 10 on your own and completed the charts that go along with that. Today's lesson is to actually go through a worksheet where we're going to focus on word choice, the author's word choice, mood, tone, and then also symbolism. And these are a little bit challenging, so I want to guide you through it quite a bit, and you're going to need your interactive notebook handy. We've created several things in there, both from this year and last year, that we're going to take a look at in order to help us complete the worksheet. So you have this sheet available in Teams in your assignments. We'll take a look at it here. So make sure that you fill in the heading. Part 1 deals with word choice, mood, and tone. So, and you need your book handy. I forgot to say that too. So please complete this worksheet either in class, in Teams meeting, or with this particular video. And I really want to guide you through parts of it. So in the chart, you see 3 columns. We have word choice, which we're going to pull text details for. I'm going to guide you in a couple parts of this as to where I want you to go, and in some of them, I'm going to pick the word choices as an example. But then as you keep going, you are going to have to pick quotes from those particular paragraphs that you think help emphasize the word choice of the author. Because when authors write, they're thinking carefully about what words they want to use, how they can best express their ideas. And they think pretty carefully about those words. So next to that, we're going to label the feeling for each word or phrase. Label the emotion or feeling it conveys. This is going to be the mood. We're going to pull out mood words. What mood or feeling do we get from those words that we read in the book? And then tie that into tone. Based on the images, words, and phrases that you have selected, describe the tone of the text in one word. So we are going to go back to our notebook in a few minutes in order to pick those words out. But first, we need to go to our books. I left mine in my bag. So grab your book, please. Okay. So we see we're going to practice with the first paragraph of chapter 10 on page 218. Okay, let's read that full paragraph. "How does it look?" asked Papa as I passed through the sitting room on my way out the side door. Over a week had passed since he had been injured, and this was his first morning up. He was seated by the cold fireplace, his head still bandaged, his broken leg resting on a wooden chair. His eyes were on Mama at her desk. So just that paragraph, we're going to pick out some specific words that the author uses to help convey an idea. So the sentence that I pulled out from that, I already have here for you in quotes. And you see, he was seated by the cold fireplace, his head still bandaged, his leg resting on a wooden chair. So you have to think about what feelings do we get from that, and really think about those word choices. Cold fireplace. A cold fireplace has a very different feeling than a warm hearth, right? Bandaged, wooden chair. So some of those details are going to affect the meaning. So I'm going to switch my share for just a second, and we're going to take a look at the mood and tone words. If you would please go to your interactive notebook where we made, we took our notes on mood and tone, and we had created these charts. So actually I had given these to you. We're going to focus on these ones at the top. Okay, thinking through what is the feeling or the mood that we get from this first paragraph. Is it cheerful or hopeful? Not likely, right? So keep looking through that. It's not really mournful. We're not totally sad. Is it dark? Ominous? Not really. Sad? It's not terrifying or horrific. It's not horrible. Could it be morbid? Sad? Chilling, dismal, gloomy. Those are some ideas. You don't have to pick from that particular list. You might be able to come up with a better word than what is in here. And actually in the box that you have there, I do want more than one word in that particular box. So the last box for tone asks for one word, but this one says to label the feeling for each word or phrase, label the emotion or feeling it conveys. I would like you to describe it. So remember how I touched on some specific word choices here? You might even go through the feeling that I get from the cold fireplace is the fact that his head is still bandaged, makes me feel. The wooden chair makes me feel. Okay, so I'd like you to give me at least a sentence in this box. So take a minute before we go on, put your cursor in this box and type that out. If you need to pause, please do. Then when we get to tone, so these images, we're thinking about this cold fireplace, the wooden chair. He's got his leg up on the chair. His head is still bandaged. We can picture those things. What then is the tone that the author is conveying to us? So that's different than the feeling that we have. So once again, let's take a look at, and I apologize for the different screen swaps all the time. Okay, let's look at the tone words this time. So what is the tone of the author in that particular paragraph or sentence? So we see sincere, enthusiastic, honest, critical, ecstatic, ironic, affectionate. Is the author hurt? I'm sorry, I paused. I read those in my head and then I get over to hurt. Papa is hurt. Would the tone be hurt? Is the author conveying hurt? Not really. Maybe nervous. Papa's checking. How do I look? Lighthearted, maybe. So once again, these are not the only words that you can choose from, but you need to remember that the tone is what the author conveys. Okay, so you need to be thinking about what is it that the author is conveying, the particular tone of the author. And you can pick out one word either from this list or another idea that you might have. Once again, if you need to pause, please do. I'm going to go back to our other chart. We're continuing down. So this time you need to do a little bit more for me. In this box, it asks you to practice with the last paragraph of chapter 10, which is on page 241. So I am going to read that to you, but there's no quote here yet. So what you need to do is pick out what quote from that last paragraph really gives across some key word choices that you think are going to help develop the feeling and also convey the tone of the author. So I'm on 241. When I reached the church steps, I looked back again. TJ was still there, an indistinct blur blending into the gathering dusk. And I began to think that perhaps he would not go with the Simses. But then the rude squawk of the truck's horn blasted the quiet evening, and TJ turned his back on us and fled across the field. So we can see in the hint, it does say what's another word for rude, for squawk, for blasted, and if the author had used those words or had not used those words, would the tone have changed? Why or why not? So that might lead us to think that that last sentence would be a good one to pull. And you certainly can. We also kind of get that indistinct blur is a really good choice as well. Remember, it's raining, a storm is coming. Well, not really, it's at dusk and then we can feel the humidity. So pick out which one do you want to put. Remember to put quotation marks to start it. And then copy at least one sentence there. You could do two together. What feeling do we get from that? The rude squawk of the truck's horn blasted the quiet evening. So remember too, who is blasting the horn? She had just said, I thought TJ wasn't going to go with the Simses. So R.W. and Melvin Sims have come to the revival, the Black revival, right, at their church. They're not going in, but they have their truck and they're picking up TJ, rudely honking the horn, right? I don't know if you ever heard about a boyfriend showing up, instead of coming in and meeting the parents, they blast the horn. Oh, boys, don't ever do that. Get on the bad side of the parents. It's the same sort of thing. It's a rude horn in the middle of something else. What feeling do we get from that? So let's go to our words again. Once again, not cheerful or hopeful. Oh, it's definitely, we get into some of these words in the middle column. Dark, ominous. Do we know what ominous means? Like something, the next word there, threatening, something threatening or unknown is about to come. So, pick out the feeling, make sure you describe it. Pick out why, connect it to those words. Now, this last one is really just one word for tone. What is another word? You don't have to necessarily answer this question. It's something I want you thinking about. You certainly can answer it here if you'd like to, but the key thing to have in this box, you can either put it above it or below it, make sure I can easily find it, your word for tone. Okay, so while we're thinking about that, let's go back to that. So what would be the tone of the author in this part? Now up here, I was thinking dark, ominous, threatening. As I come down here, serious, suspicious, condescending, those don't fit. So I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but I'm looking at these cynical, nervous, depressed, disappointed. Does Cassie particularly seem disappointed that he's going with him? Surprised? How does she feel? And it's not really Cassie giving this across, it's more the author expressing it, but we get a lot of it through Cassie's emotions. So what is the tone of that particular paragraph, since it is Cassie talking? Can you pick one word from this list? If not, and it doesn't have to be from that list, but it should be a word that expresses tone, okay, what the author is trying to get across. Sorry, I meant to go back to the worksheet. Okay. This last box, you're going to need to pause. You need to do this on your own. You can choose any paragraph from chapter 10. Okay, so I covered the very beginning, I covered the very end. Look through, pick out a paragraph, and you need to, on this line, and actually won't go on the line, I should probably just delete that for you guys. Right after the page number, make sure that you type in the actual page number. Since we all have the same book, it'll be real easy for me to find whatever page it was. And then underneath, just like up here, you had the quotation marks. Make sure that you type in a quote from the paragraph. You don't have to type the whole paragraph in, but please give me at least a good phrase, if not a complete sentence. Go back to your own notes to pick out feeling. Describe the feeling that you, the reader, get from that particular part, how those words tie into the feeling that's being expressed. And then over here, once again, describe it in one word. What is the author's tone? What is the tone that the author is using in that paragraph? So remember the middle column, the feeling, that's you, the reader. The reader gets that feeling, that's the mood. And then with the tone, that's from the author. The author is conveying that tone. All right, you have questions to answer in this box below, 2 of them. I want you to make sure that it's obvious, the separation. Feel free to enter and make it bigger. If it carries on to the next page, no problem. We see, how do these specific word choices and tone contribute to the meaning? So we're looking at all of this information together, and how does it contribute to the meaning of the story, the meaning of this chapter, and what the author is trying to get across? How do those connect? Remember to start out by restating the question. The specific word choices and tone contribute to the meaning because, and that's all I need is that and the information after the because. So really only one sentence there. And pause and answer it if you need to. At the end of chapter 10, what has happened between the Black and white communities? How does the author's specific word choice help us understand the intensity of the situation. So I said a little bit, but it's very important that you have read this chapter. We know the end of this chapter that they are at like a Black church revival. Okay, it's a big festival, a big party for their church. Usually no whites come to this. RW and Melvin show up, but there's an intensity between that. There's so much more than what I'm stating right now. So tell me what's happening more specifically between the two communities, because there's more than what I just said. And then how does the word choice, the things that Mildred Taylor says, help intensify this situation? She could just put it down like I just said. Yep, they showed up, they're not getting along, blah, blah, blah. But she chooses very well her words to describe what's going on. All right, pause and come back for symbolism. Make sure that this whole chart is filled out, and then we're gonna go down to analyzing symbols. Okay, so we see on part 2, analyzing symbols. I want to remind you, I'm actually going to stop my share for just a second before we even read that. Last year, we covered symbolism when we were reading The Giver, or right before The Giver. We had 2 pages in our interactive notebook. The first one looked like this, where we talked about all the different colors and what colors could represent. I can't remember if I actually had you write the correct definition or the complete definition for symbolism. I was looking to see if it was on my posters behind me. I don't think it's there either. Oh, yes, it is. Way up there. You're no way going to be able to see that. Of course, there's a reflection on it. I'll be right back. Oh, I can't get it. Leave this in so you can laugh at me. But, you know, if you were in class, this is what I would be doing. I'd be climbing up here and doing this. And I'm not redoing my video 10 times just so I can find it. Cool. Now, if you didn't write it in your notes, hopefully you've flipped back and you found those notes. Here's our overall definition for symbolism. Okay, when a person, place, or thing, any noun, stands for something outside itself. Okay, so when something represents something else. So we have our colors. All colors, the one that comes up in my family quite a bit, we were just talking about the color purple. Partially because, although you're watching this in January, it's Christmas time. We have purple candles for Advent, and we were wondering why. Why are they purple? And I don't remember, we looked it up, but in the church, it means something in particular. And of course, my daughter, who knows more about the other symbolisms, was saying that purple represents royalty. That's not the reason our candles are purple, but we see if we flip out purple, royalty, nobility, spirituality, ceremony, luxury, mysterious, and wisdom. So it can represent more than just one thing. You do want to be careful because sometimes people will create their own ideas of symbolism and the rest of the world is not in tune with what you're saying. So you want to make sure it really is something that it represents. So let's go to an easy one. And it probably ties into our book a little bit, not true, stereotypically. White and black. Typically, in a novel, our good guys would be dressed in what color? And your bad guys would be dressed in what color? Now, white is supposed to represent purity, simplicity, cleanliness, peace, innocence, youth. It goes on. And then black, we see power, formality, elegance, wealth, fear, evil, etc. So those are some of the easier ones to go through. quick reminder, use this to help you as we go through this next part, if it is helpful. Symbolism really is a challenge. Now on the next page in your notebook, you have another one with objects. Okay, so we colored in a bunch of objects and what those different things might represent. So we had fire. What could fire represent? There's gonna be a fire in our story. There has been fire in our story. Now it could represent warmth, comfort, passion, but that last one, destruction, right? We're going to talk about a storm in this next chapter and what the storm might symbolize. But on the opposite end, we have the sun, right? So a sun can represent brightness, happiness, beginnings, a new day, and light. Now, if you're going to contrast that, you know, if it's sunny and beautiful out, that's easy to see. But then we have a storm. What would be the opposite representation with the storm? We'll take a look at that in a minute. All right, I think that's probably pretty good as far as reviewing those. Hopefully you have your notes handy. You still have those in your notebook from last year. And let's take a look at the worksheet. So last year when we started talking about symbolism, remember we were reading the book, The Giver, and we talked about the apple, and that the apple can represent, you know, our flaws and downfalls, and that things are not always perfect. There was more to it than that. And then we looked at some other things that, what do the comfort objects represent? What do the color of their eyes represent? I don't know if this is coming back to you or not. So we're going to analyze the symbols in this book so far through chapters 9 and 10, mostly chapter 10, but I'm going back to chapter 9 for one. You will need your book handy. We are going to reread parts of it, although I did stick Post-its in mine, so I'll get to them kind of quick. Remember to pause it at any point that you need me to. So let's first look at the worksheet. As chapter 10 ends, a storm is brewing. We see here, on the last night of the revival, the sky took on a strange yellowish cast. The air felt close, suffocating, and no wind stirred. The upcoming storm is symbolic of the rising tension and conflict between the white and black communities. Conflict is building just like a storm and is ready to break violently. So just like a storm, well, you know, you can see it in the distance, it's coming, and all of a sudden, we have the same thing with this tension between the communities. It's building, it's building, it's building, and something is gonna happen. As you continue reading, pay attention to how the storm becomes a symbol for the tension and conflict in the novel. So in chapter 10, we really don't get the introduction to it, and I'm telling you about it. But as you read the next 2 chapters, we get into the climax, etc. Pay careful attention. And I will let you know, I'm pretty sure there are some questions like this on your quiz at the end and connected to your chapter 11 and 12 questions. So your directions for this worksheet are to analyze other symbols found in the novel by using the chart below. Some of the answers have been done for you. So we're going to do this first one together, which I just read the quote up here, the coming storm on page 238. The quote was up here. The question asks, how is it described? So this is you putting it into your own words. And I'm saying the sky is yellowish and the air is hot and stifling. Okay, we get this yellowish cast. The air felt, it's close and suffocating. That's the hot and stifling. Now I'm just curious, if I go back to my chart, what does yellow represent? Does it fit? So remember last year I was talking about these contrasts, that it starts out with joy, happiness, optimism, imagination, sunshine, and summer. That doesn't fit this one, does it? But then we get these last ones, illness and hazard. So yellow can take on different tones. If you are here looking at the sky has a strange yellowish cast, you're not thinking of the beautiful sunshine, especially if the storm is coming. So it changes the meaning. Man, does that make this hard, doesn't it? So I also give you the answer for what it might symbolize. And I want to point out that I used a complete sentence. The tension is building between the white and black communities, specifically the Wallaces versus Mr. Granger and the Logans. Now, normally when you see something underlined in red, it means that something is spelled wrong and you want to right-click that and find out how to spell it right. It's going to continue to underline names though, particularly when I'm pluralizing them. So we can leave those alone. All right, let's take a look at the next symbol together. The page, we're gonna look at page 205, 206. We're gonna read the paragraph, and we have this little hint. Papa shows Cassie a fig tree growing among maple and oak trees. Now, in the past, I used to make students go find this on their own. We're gonna do this together, try to help you out because it is challenging. So I think this is my first one that's marked. Yep, this is back in chapter 9. So if you would turn to page 205, we're going to start with the very last paragraph and then it turns over to the next page. Let me see. Papa looked down at me and brought me closer, then waved his hand toward the drive. You see that fig tree over yonder, Cassie? Them other trees all around, that oak and walnut, they're a lot bigger and they take up more room and give so much shade that they almost overshadow that little old fig. But that fig tree's got roots that run deep, and it belongs in that yard as much as that oak and walnut. It keeps on blooming, bearing good fruit year after year, knowing all the time it'll never get as big as them other trees. Just keeps on growing and doing what it gotta do. It don't give up. It give up, it'll die. There's a lesson to be learned from that tree, Cassie girl, because we're like it. We keep going, or we keep doing what we gotta, and we don't give up. We can't. Now this one is nice because Papa tells what the symbol is. So first of all, start with how, in this box, how it's described. So the fig tree is small among bigger trees, but it has roots and it belongs there, right? What does it symbolize? It symbolizes their family. They have roots where they live. They're smaller and beneath other families like the Grangers and the Wallaces, but they still belong there. And they have to fight and not give up, just like that little tree. Take a minute to pause the video, come back and join me in a minute. Oh, make sure you answer the question. All right, the next one, the forest where the Logans meet Jeremy. This is on page 227. So let's turn there. And we're gonna look at that second full paragraph. To escape the heat, the boys and I often ambled into the coolness of the forest after the chores were done. There, while the cows and their calves grazed nearby, we sat on the banks of the pond, our backs propped against an old hickory or pine or walnut, our feet dangling lazily in the cool water, and waited for a watermelon brought from the garden to chill. Sometimes Jeremy joined us there, making his way through the deep forest land from his own farm over a mile away. But the meetings were never planned. None of our parents would have liked that. Okay, how is the forest described? It's cool. They're escaping the heat, coolness, right? There's water they can dangle their feet in. Then it's a deep forest. There's depth to it that they can get to it, and so can Jeremy. I give you the symbolism because this is a little trickier. It is neutral territory. What does neutral mean? Think of World War II, Switzerland, right? They didn't fight. Okay, there's no fighting there. It's a spot where they can both go, where their parents aren't going to see them, so the children can meet there without the adults knowing, and they can still get along and be friends. All right, then we get into Jeremy's tree house, and there's kind of two parts to the tree house here. Make sure that you enter, and this may end up going on to the next page too once you start typing your answers in, no worries about that. But let's turn to page 229. And I'm about almost 3/4 of the way down, and Jeremy starts talking. He says, I think when I grow up, I'm gonna build me a house and some trees and just live there all the time, said Jeremy. How are you gonna do that? Asked Little Man. Oh, I'll find me some real strong trees and just build. I figure I'll have the trunk of one tree in the bedroom and the other in the kitchen. What come you wanna live in a tree for? Christopher John inquired. It's so peaceful up there and quiet. Cool too, answered Jeremy, especially at night. How do you know how cool it is at night? I said. Jeremy's face brightened. Because I got my bedroom up there. We looked at him unbelieving. I do, really. Built it myself and I sleeps up there. Come these hot nights, I just climbs in my tree and it's like going into another world. Why, I can see and hear things up there that I bet you only the squirrels and the birds can see and hear. Sometimes I think I can even see all the way over to y'all's place. Aw, shoot, boy, you're a story, I said. Your place too far away and you know it. Jeremy's face dropped. Well, maybe I can't see it, but that don't keep me from pretending I do. He was silent a second, and then hopped up suddenly, his face bright again. Hey, why don't y'all come over and see it? My pa's going to be gone all day, and it's lots of fun, and I could show y'all. They don't do that. So there are technically two tree houses. One he wants to build when he's an adult. Why does he want to live in a tree house? And he does have a small tree house right now, which he calls his bedroom. It's probably a normal tree house or even maybe just a platform, excuse me, where he goes and will sleep at night. So how is it described? The one that he wants and even the one that he currently has. And what in the world could that tree house represent? That's up to you to come up with, okay? Excuse me, make sure you have complete sentences there. I believe that that is it for this worksheet. Hang on to it because it may help you as we get into the end of our unit. Have a great day.